Welcome back, everyone. Next, we have Autris. It trades on the OTCID under the symbol AUTR. And it's a forward thinking company committed to promoting freedom and sustainability. Through strategic acquisitions and innovative initiatives, Autris aims to create communities that embody the principles of freedom, independence, resilience, sustainability, and transparency. Happy to welcome Patrick Hebert, the CEO, Alex Voss, the CIO, and Don Morrison, CFO. Welcome, gentlemen. So happy to have you on the conference today.
Thank you, Anna. Appreciate it.
All right, the floor is yours.
All right, thanks. I'll get started here and going to have three of us presenting today. So I'll kick it off with talking a little bit about Autris, and then I'll hand it off to Alexander Voss, our CIO, and then to Don Morrison, our CFO, and we'll wrap up at the end with questions and answers. So who are we? What is Autris? Autris is the parent company, and we develop freedom and sustainability-oriented communities in Latin America. We also have an agroforestry component to it, which also helps with the sustainability of teak and avocado plantations. But our main focus is really developing the Veritas Villages brand of communities, which I'm going to talk a little bit about. And how did it start? Well, my son Spencer and I lived on a boat for quite a while, and when you're out in a boat, you don't get, this is in the ocean, a yacht on the ocean, so you can't really plug in a long extension cord and create, so you have to create your own power, you catch your own fish, eat sea asparagus and that sort of thing. And we really enjoyed it. In the beginning, 20, 30 years ago, it was a hobby. Now it's become, we want to bring that whole idea of freedom oriented, and didn't rely on anybody. Create your own desalinated water and everything. So everything you needed to live was, done by yourself out there. And the independence of that was really nice. And so we wanted to bring that to land. And we didn't even realize how popular it was going to be, but it certainly has turned out that way. So what makes Autris so successful? We created, a number of years ago, we created this freedom, independence, resiliency, sustainability, and transparency philosophy. The acronym is FIRST. And, you can figure it out for yourselves. It's a mouthful and everything, but really, what does that mean? Here's a couple examples. We're very big believers in freedom of speech, and we really don't like the political division of, US, Canada, Western Europe, everything around that, and Australia. And a lot of that was obviously brought on by how COVID was handled. And that's when our communities really started taking off. And we believe in economic freedom. Alex is going to talk a little bit more about our Bitcoin strategy and everything that goes around that. But we've been very into Bitcoin from day one when we initiated Autris. If you look at the independence, we produce our own solar power. We have our own water wells on site in the communities. We have our own orchards and gardens and stables, produce our own food. Obviously, we have very beautiful luxury homes. This is not, the eco-friendly yurt in the forest thing, although it is eco-friendly. That this is more about independence and freedom. And the side benefit is it's also good for the environment. The resilience, we have very energy efficient homes, resilient against weather. They're all concrete and steel homes. We don't use wood for the framing of our homes. That's important because most of our homes here are down here in the tropical regions. So, you have termites and things like that. So they're very resilient. Sustainability, I'd mentioned the orchards and gardens. We produce our own food, our own water, our own power, and transparency is very, very important too. In a community, lots of times the HOA is sort of the anxiety driver for communities because you elect or appoint an HOA president, and we don't do any of that. We're big on the blockchain, and so we use a DAO to manage the voting in our HOAs, our homeowners associations. So it doesn't need a president. It functions with the will of the people in the community. And I won't go into quadratic voting, but a number of different things that we use to have very open transparency and lots of freedom involved in the community. And that's resonates with a lot of people these days all over the world. And the issues is mostly, in Western politics, there's such division between Republican, Democrat in the US, right and left in all the countries, liberal, conservative, whatever you want to call it. We find most of our clients are libertarian, sort of down the middle, just want a live and let live kind of scenario without cancel culture and censorship. And, you see in Canada, the UK, a lot of these countries now have very authoritarian style governments. Fortunately, Latin America has kind of gone through that in the past and learned from that. And now they're very much more capitalist oriented countries and libertarian oriented countries. And so they're very, and it's cultural. It's very much a live and let live culture where, look, you do your thing, I'll do mine. And it's just a nice place to live in. A big part of freedom in our minds is financial freedom. And like I said, we've been Bitcoin centric from the beginning. We accept Bitcoin. We have received Bitcoin many times for homes and home sites in our communities here. And actually in the backdrop here, I'm in our welcome center. It's a bit more of a rustic heritage building that we fixed up. This is a kind of a gathering spot where people come in the evening, have a glass of wine or coffee in the morning. But I thought it'd be nice to do this. I am doing this presentation here fully based on off-grid power. We're 100% here off-grid on our power, off-grid on our water, off-grid on our food, but they're luxury homes. You can check in some of the homes that we have. Very beautiful, some large homes. We're building many homes around me here. Trying to ask the guys to be a little quiet as an active construction site, but we have 4 or 5 bedroom luxury homes or down to tiny homes that are very small. So it's a big gamut of different types of people moving into here too. But the one common thread is they all just want to get away from that divisiveness and have a freedom-oriented community. And so we've accepted Bitcoin for the homes. We actually have very few rules in a freedom-oriented community, but one of them is that you have to use Bitcoin. If you have a business here, you have to accept Bitcoin. You can accept US dollars or Canadian dollars or Panamanian Balboas or whatever you want as other currencies too. But one of the common themes is you have to also accept Bitcoin because we're trying to drive that transparency and push the Bitcoin market in our communities. We actually have a Bitcoin miner in behind me a little ways back, and it's run 100% off solar power. As far as I know, we're one of the very few or only groups in the region here to do Bitcoin mining off of excess solar power. So the solar systems have come so far these days that we have the excess power. We have run the home. We have air conditioning and all the different things. I think this home has 3 or 4 fridges and freezers, but there's no grid power here. It's all 100% off the solar systems and batteries, and it works great. And so you have a whopping $0 power bill too. So you're real low cost of living as well. And I mentioned the DAO already. And we have a very strong Bitcoin treasury strategy. And I'm going to turn it over here now to Alex, who's really just come in recently with the Bitcoin, boosting our Bitcoin strategy. And he'll talk a little bit more about that. So I'll let you take it from here, Alex.
Very good. Thank you very much, Patrick. Appreciate that. And as Patrick mentioned, Bitcorp is actually a very recent acquisition from Autris. It is primarily driven by myself and my long-term business partner, Dr. Titus Gebel. The idea of the acquisition of Bitcorp is really to bolster and strengthen the Autris strategy in terms of Bitcoin treasury. There's a lot of talk in the market about this. We have some views on it that we will talk about later in this presentation as well as over time. But in general, we think that there is a lot of value to be accrued to companies by being forward thinking on this particular topic. In general, we like to classify ourselves by that second to bottom bullet, Midwest trust and German discipline. That's the background of the founders of Bitcorp. I think it coincides quite well with the Autris team. We are not trying to be a Wall Street shop. We are not trying to lever up to our eyeballs and make crazy risky transactions. What we're trying to do is be strategic and long-term focused to accrue value to the shareholders of Autris. So why Bitcoin on the balance sheet? A lot of what Patrick already talked about is relevant here as well. We do absolutely see Bitcoin as scarce, liquid, and an increasingly monetizing asset. We do think it's one of the best, if not the best, long-term hedge against fiat debasement. And it really does align the treasury strategy of Autris with the ultimate consumer of what Autris is providing. There is a strong freedom-minded focus to the company, and we think Bitcoin quite aligns with that. Why now? Well, of course, you could think about this any time is a good time to be buying Bitcoin from our perspective. But in particular, now we have a little bit more regulatory clarity, particularly in the United States. We also think that now is a very interesting time in the sense of the traditional 4-year market cycle for Bitcoin. If it is true that Bitcoin is going to go into a bit of a bear market over the next years, that's no problem for our strategy. We're continuing to grow the profitable business that's underlying Autris, and that creates a lot of free cash flows that we can buy more Bitcoin because it's at a relatively lower price. On the other hand, if Bitcoin is going to take off from here, well, we ought to be getting into this market now and accumulating as much Bitcoin as we can as it creates, more of this escape velocity and an increase in its market cap. Why do Bitcoin treasury companies make sense? Why not just have individuals buy Bitcoin? Well, I think it's true that native Bitcoin, just buying it yourself, does remain a very good saving strategy, arguably the best. It is also the case, though, that public investors do have certain issues, in many cases, getting exposure to Bitcoin. The probably bigger reason for us to enter this business, however, is that we actually think the corporate entity creates a structural benefit to the accumulation of more Bitcoin, particularly Bitcoin per share, over the long term. We think this is the case, one, through generating free cash flows that you can buy Bitcoin, but also through this so-called MNAV premium, which is really the trading value of the Bitcoin above and beyond the underlying Bitcoin holdings. And we think that you can use that in creative ways, although we want to be very disciplined and cautious with it, to actually buy more Bitcoin per share for our shareholders. Finally, we do have a very long-term horizon that over time, what we want to do is accumulate as much Bitcoin as possible because we think that everything will be denominated in Bitcoin over the long term, and the more you can accumulate in the short term, but still staying solvent and not putting yourself at risk, will generate great returns for the shareholders of Autris. Generating an MNAV premium, this is a quite dense slide. We don't need to go into all of it, but the point that we want to express in this particular slide is that we do think MNAV premiums have some role. They do make sense, but it makes sense only to the extent that the future free cash flows that can be created by an underlying business can be used to grow the Bitcoin per share. We think from that perspective, we are growing a business that is going to generate more free cash flows in the future, and then we can use that to buy and accumulate Bitcoin to increase the overall per share amount. There is, of course, risks that you need to mitigate in this. We think the most important way to mitigate all risks in this regard is to have the right team behind the execution. From that perspective, we really do think it's quite important to have the focus of a sort of Midwest mindset, but the German discipline to execute, to not over-lever, to not take on additional risks that are not needed. We are, from the outset, not planning to use much in the way of leverage in order to grow the Bitcoin treasury for Autris. We would like to do it more organically through free cash flows, have a long-term thesis on Bitcoin, and slowly deploy our strategy over time rather than rush in and potentially risk any downside. I think with that, I'll turn it over here to Don to wrap out the end of the slides.
Yeah, so just put to the last slide, I'll try and give a financial overview very quick. So firstly, again, Anna, thank you for inviting us to participate in this conference. This is actually our first conference, so we're pretty excited to talk about the Autris story. We think we have a very compelling investment opportunity, and so I'd like to just talk very briefly about where we started when we did our reverse takeover, where we are now, and kind of where we're going. So as mentioned, it was expedient for us to become public by taking over a shell, which we did in Autris in September of 2023. We did that with an initial $132,000 acquisition of a teak and avocado parcel. And from there, quarter by quarter, we have been adding our projects and our real estate investments into the company, such that by March, a year and a half later, this is March of 2025, our last published financial statement, we had grown to just under $15 million. We're now reporting record revenue from our house sales. We're reporting record shareholders' equity, record across the board in terms of working capital. We can take that forward another 6 months to now, We just announced on Monday our largest purchase to date, which was a $29 million purchase of what will be the newest Veritas Village in Atenas, Costa Rica. If you add that plus several other $1 million of property swaps that we did, I think it's fair to say that we will exit our fiscal 2025 around the $44-45 million mark. That is about 4.5 times our asset size that we were this time last year. And I think it's also fair to say that we will repeat our record performance from fiscal 2024. Going forward, with Costa Rica in the balance sheet, our analysis shows that that property should generate between $240 and $280 million in revenue for us. We're anticipating keeping our gross profit around 40%. When you add that to our existing revenue pipeline, I think it's fair to say that we have a total project pipeline well north of $300 million going forward. That takes us up to yesterday, where, as Alex noted, we announced the purchase of Bitcorp. Probably more important is the addition of Alex and Dr. Titus Gebel to our team. I don't think we can underscore enough the importance of those individuals in terms of their understanding of corporate governance, venture capital, capital raising, capital markets, and management of Bitcoin treasury strategy. So we welcome Alex to the board as our new CIO and as Titus Gebel to our advisory board. So as a result of that, that's kind of a segue into our last two items, which is we have announced a $30 million capital raise. That is a significant undertaking for a OTC company. I can say just at this point that I think that our shareholders will be very pleased at the expediency of that capital raise and excited about the caliber of the accredited investors that come to the table to support our growth. And that all leads into the last item, which is our undertaking to seek a listing on a senior exchange. I think that we have worked over the last 2 years on the over-the-counter market, kind of cut our teeth. We've expanded our board, expanded our management team. I think your viewers and are probably well aware of what that means to go onto a senior exchange in terms of access to greater capital, in terms of higher profile and visibility. And I think ultimately it should result in increased liquidity, and in our particular case, increased liquidity probably correlates to a recalibration of market cap. So for all of those reasons, we're pretty excited about the progress of the company from a financial standpoint and otherwise. We go to work every day to build this company. We think we're building a world-class company. And with that being said, I'm very happy to turn it back to Anna, and we'll try and answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Really fascinating. My mind is just filled with all different types of questions, and I think our viewers are asking the same types of questions. First of all, Amaya wants to know a little bit more about the model. Are you home builders? Can you explain what that looks like exactly?
Yes, I mean, we're community builders, so a community includes a home. Basically, they're towns. We build towns throughout Latin America. We have 2 in Panama, 1 in Nicaragua. We just acquired the Costa Rican one, and we have plans to expand likely into Argentina and Ecuador in the next couple of years. So our goal, one of the things that Don mentioned about the capital raise is to allow us to do that faster. And, you have a lot of infrastructure to build. You have roads and lighting and all the different things that goes into building a town. But these towns are intentional communities, and we're seeing an enormous amount of interest. We announced our Coronado, where I'm at right now in Panama. Veritas Village Coronado is what it's called. And it's roughly around 100 homes. So it's a smaller kind of town, I would say. But within the first webinar that we announced it, we received probably we sold about 70% of it. So it's unheard of. The developers around us don't know what's going on. Like, what is your magic bullet? And it's because we're speaking the language of people that want to live in a non-divisive community.
Absolutely. You've got a customer here for sure. We have a few more questions from William. I'm going to break them down. First of all, William wants to know, what do you sell a home for? If you can talk numbers, and can you describe them? Like how many square feet, how much land?
We have quite a wide range in our catalog of different homes. And of course, it's being freedom-oriented communities. You can design your own home, and we typically build them ourselves. We have an in-house construction group in each community. And that's more to protect the buyer, because, you know, when you're building in another country, if you're kind of an absentee builder, or you're watching your home being built kind of from afar, it never works out very well. So we know how to build. We've been doing it for 20 some years. And, you know, we've come from a background of builders. So the range is, you know, tiny homes, 50 square meters, call that 500-ish square feet, up to, I don't know, 5,000 square feet, somewhere around there. So it's quite a range, and it's an interesting mix, because it's a different demographic of people, but they all tend to get along, and because they're all looking for that same kind of freedom-oriented community.
And you touched upon this, but can you talk a little bit more about the infrastructure? What does it look like? And William wants to know, do you bank land and get a construction loan that is released as units are sold?
Yeah, well, in the case, I can let Don, maybe you can speak to the details of the Autris acquisition, but yeah, it is basically, you know, we are banking land in certain cases for future plans for Veritas villages. The Autris one is, go ahead, Don, maybe you can just quickly explain the Autris acquisition.
Yeah, so that's a unique, because of the size of that project. For all our other projects, we pay cash and buy the land, so we own that outright. We don't have any bank debt. In the case of Autris, because of our track record, we were able to obtain vendor financing, and that vendor financing is in the neighborhood of $15 million. However, it is linked to the sale of lots. So as a result of that, as we sell the lots, we then release them. So it's really advantageous and flexible to us in that manner. So that's how we finance that particular project.
And I guess I forgot to mention, Anna, on the previous question, the range of homes is somewhere, depending on which community you're buying in, but somewhere around $180,000 up to the sky is the limit. And for instance, in our Nicaraguan Veritas village, I think it's $189 for a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom home right on the beach. Beautiful, one of the most beautiful tropical beaches I've ever been to, and I've been to a lot of them. And so, you know, that's a good starting point. And then, you know, that's also great for rental. Obviously, the price to rent ratio is extremely favorable given the low cost of homes in this region. So of course, you can build a multi-million-dollar mansion as well. So it's kind of the gamut.
Well, Cordell and myself, curious. So with that price point you said, how exactly does accepting Bitcoin for payment fit into this? If you can explain that.
Well, it depends if you want to build or buy an existing home, or want to have us build a new one for you. We have a few model homes that are for sale. So you literally send us the Bitcoin and you would own the home. You get the title for the home. And in that case, the 189,000 one that I mentioned is actually both the home and the lot right by the beach. So it's, you know, certainly in California, you'd be looking at 10 times that for just the lot. So you know, you're really on one of the nicest places for under $200,000. And it's in a community with a golf course and restaurants and things like that. So it's a really spectacular opportunity. And of course, here where I am in Panama, they're somewhere in a little bit more over 200, maybe $250,000 for a really nice home and lot as well. And you know, it's great in these communities. We have, you know, the community orchards and 40 or 50 different types of fruit and gardens, hydroponic gardens, a year-round creek that runs right through the property, for a tilapia pond if you want to go fish for some tilapia, and, you know, just about everything you can think of, tennis courts or paddle courts. Paddle's a big sport down here in Latin America, so it's kind of replacing tennis a lot of places. But that sort of thing. We have a music studio coming, a woodworking shop, and lots of things to do. So, you know, frankly, we're pretty open about it. If, you know, another COVID event happened and people didn't want to wear masks, or, you know, have different economic shutdowns and mandates, we just close the gate. And in these kind of communities, in this Latin American culture, it's just a live and let live. And you can have a normal life with all those sorts of things and amenities to do within the community.
Awesome. Bria says you mentioned off grid often. So, how are you handling local or municipal taxes and fees?
Unfortunately, we can't get away from property taxes, but property taxes in Latin America are very low, usually in a few $100s a year type of thing. So it's a blessing to have a home down here. I mean, I'm originally Canadian, and the Canadian taxes were absolutely brutal. It's the main driving factor that why I left Canada. And of course, the weather was number two. But yeah, I mean, we actually are doing some unique things. I mentioned the Bitcoin mining systems we have on the solar system. So we're trying to get the cost of living here down to basically zero. So that's our goal. Obviously, with the free food and water and everything in the community, the amenities that you can have, is the only thing that we really have to deal with is HOA fees and property tax. HOA fees are necessary to keep the landscaping and roads and everything in good shape. But if we can get to the point where the Bitcoin miner, if you had a Bitcoin miner in your garage or something like that, and it was cranking out enough to pay for your HOA and property taxes, then you can kind of get to the point where your cost of living is zero.
And Hazel asks, are people buying these for second homes? And if so, what's the security like?
I mean, it's a mix. A lot of people, this is a plan A. We also do what we call a plan B. If people see another event like COVID happening, and they want to come somewhere where they can be more free, they buy this home as an investment home. They might rent it out as well. We have full-time on-site security, and sometimes the mainstream media gives these countries down here a hard time, but the safety is frankly much safer than any American city, pretty much. So. And, yeah, I'm Canadian, and I always grew up in a very safe country, but that's gone the wrong way in Canada too. And it's becoming much less safe while these countries are becoming more and more safe. You probably see what's going on in El Salvador. It used to be one of, if not the most dangerous countries in the world. And now it's one of, if not the safest countries in the world with Bukele, the new president that has done such an amazing job. So a lot of these countries are moving that way. And I'm sitting here in our, Veritas Village Coronado community, and we have no issues at all. So.
Fantastic. Michael asks, when is your construction, or what is your construction strategy to scale growth from your current delivery of 10 to 20 homes a year to 100 plus homes a year, considering LATAM's construction constraints and quality risks to ensure shareholder confidence in the ability to execute your objectives and meet growth targets?
Well, I personally have been doing this with my son for 2 decades, building homes in this region, and yeah, it's tough. That's the reason we do the building. If it's left to, somebody that doesn't understand the construction down here, and it goes right down to the details. Most of the homes in North America or Europe are stick homes, like they're built with wood. They're not down here, so it's a totally different building methodology. We build to California earthquake style of seismic control, and we've been doing this for a long time. We're definitely, we're definitely building more homes than 10 or 20 at this point. So it's something we've been doing for a while, and it's really, I don't pretend that there was a school of hard knocks when I started doing this in 2004 or 5. Yeah, I learned the hard way, how not to build homes, but we've, I don't recommend it for people, but that's why I'd love to be able to say, yeah, just get any builder to build a home, but we don't want you to be disappointed, because if you were, you'd be disappointed in the community as a whole. And then obviously the whole company suffers. So we want everybody to enjoy the homes. And that's the same reason we actually have our own in-house property and rental management division, because when somebody comes and stays in one of our communities as a guest, we want them to have an excellent experience so that they also talk about the communities as a wonderful place to be. And if we just allow anybody to rent at all, then maybe they don't clean the home, maybe they don't take care of it, and that becomes people's memory about our communities, and we don't want that.
And last question, and you can close with this. Alan wants to know, where can he see your homes and locations that you're building?
You're definitely welcome to come where I am here today in Coronado in Panama, or Chiriquí, where Don is, also in Panama. And we have a number of homes that you can stay in and rent in our Nicaraguan Playa Pacifica, Veritas Village Playa Pacifica. Those are the ones that are the furthest ahead at this point. We have other plans with other communities as well that we can talk about, but that's probably what I would recommend. Depends which type of country, or come and see them all. They're not that far apart.
Perfect. Well, really, really interesting. Thank you so much for your time, gentlemen, and this thorough presentation. And I know this is the first time joining us on the Emerging Growth, and we certainly hope it's not the last. We'd love to follow some of your updates. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much, Anna. I really appreciate being here.
All right, everyone. We'll be right back with our next presenter.